Hello, I'm Joy Ravella and welcome to another episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. Today's verse is almost like a life cycle. It's what happens when you face a problem and how this problem leads to endurance and endurance leads to character building, so on and so forth until it produces hope. Now, I'm not sure what part of the cycle you're on, but I hope that today's episode helps you to look forward to the next step, to know that ultimately, at the end of the day, there is hope at the end. Let's get into today's Bible verse.
But not only that, we even take pride in our problems because we know that trouble produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. That is from Romans 5, verse 3-4 in the CEB version.
Once again, I have got the lovely Ash here in studio with me. Ash, how you going?
So good. How you doing, Joy?
I'm good. How are you feeling about the fact that we are kind of heading towards the halfway mark of the year?
Do you not feel like this has been one of the fastest years in the history? I feel like we say this every year, but this year just hits different. I think, I don't know what about it, but I just feel like this year is going so fast.
Yes, it really is. And you know what? I think one of the reasons why is because we've had rain and sun and we've had a whole mix of seasons that I feel like I never got my proper summer.
I agree. I think we maybe had maybe 5 days tops of hot weather.
Like so hot you couldn't even enjoy the beach.
Yeah. And then the rest was kind of I always say it wrong, but is it La Nina? La Nina.
Oh, La Nina.
La Nina.
Yeah, it's
La Nina.
The weather patterns, I think, which leads to a lot of rain.
Yes.
I think we had like a triple threat last year or something.
So basically all summer we had Miss La Nina.
Yeah.
Whatever her name is.
So today we're taking a look at Romans chapter 5, verses 3-4. What are your first thoughts on this?
It's a tough one sometimes, hey. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, like I can trust that God's doing all these things in my life. But sometimes in the moment when you're dealing with a situation, it's hard to see that, the problem will produce endurance and then that endurance will produce character and then that character will produce hope.
Yes. It's a little bit like a cycle. I think that's how I see it. When you're sort of trapped at a certain stage of it, when you are in the problem stage, all you can see is the endurance part. Yeah. You just got to get through it. And then when you're in the endurance part, you're like, oh, I didn't realize that this has produced character. Yeah. And then when you're kind of in the place where like, wow, okay, that problem led to good character. And you're like, wow, I've actually got some more hope facing this next situation now. But when you're in the problem phase, you can't quite fathom the hope on the other side of it, which I think is one of the things I take away from this verse.
For sure.
What would you say this verse tells you about who God is or what matters to him?
I really think that what this verse is saying is just to trust him. I think that what you were saying before about the word endurance, right? Endurance isn't easy. Endurance isn't saying, just wait it out, it'll be cool, just wait it out, it's all going to be fine. Endurance often means that it's tough. You have to endure the situation. And I think what it's saying is when we endure a situation rooted in God, and what rooted in God might look like is praying to him. It might look like reading his word. It might look like sometimes all you can do is be like, God, I need your help in this situation. Sometimes it's not these perfect prayers. It's literally just being like, Lord, help me. And I think that that's what this is saying is when we actually lean on God in those circumstances rather than maybe other things or things that maybe our world is saying is going to solve our problems. That's actually what produces the hope in the end.
Yeah, that's real good, Ash. How has this verse come alive in your own world?
Yeah, I would say that word, once again, endurance, definitely is something that I struggled with and I went through when I was dealing with anxiety. I know we talked about it a little bit in our episodes. I think it was from February and how I battled anxiety for a while. And we were kind of talking about it, and I kind of had the realization, I was like, wow, I endured that for 6 years. That was 6 years of pretty intense anxious and anxiety attacks.
So just for someone who doesn't understand like anxiety or panic attacks, what does that feel like physically and how did that impact you in other areas of your life?
Yeah. it looks very different on different people, but for myself, I would often start feeling a bit sick in my stomach. I'd get almost like this sinking feeling, almost like when you go on a roller coaster and your stomach drops.
Yeah.
That's almost the initial feeling. I go, oh my goodness, something's up. I'm feeling a bit anxious. Kind of from there, it could look like anything from like struggling to breathe. I just couldn't reason, or, you know, I'd have amazing people in my life giving me great advice or trying to work me through it. And nothing in my mind would just be able to comprehend a rational thought, if that makes sense. It's almost like you think the worst is going to happen and you can't convince your mind otherwise.
Right.
And sometimes you don't even know what's causing it. Sometimes it's just maybe you feel a bit unsafe or fearful, or something's overwhelming you. And that's kind of what I would find if I got overwhelmed, or if I got stressed, or even if I was put in like a new situation. That's kind of what would happen. And I particularly found it really difficult at night. I would lie kind of awake in the evenings and just struggle to sleep. And I think when you're tired, you can't think things clearly anyway. And basically it just looked like struggling to sleep. I couldn't go on sleepovers. Like as a teenager, like that was like the highlight of most of my friends' lives, was sleepovers and hanging out and school camps. And during that period of my life, I missed out on all of those things, really. Mm. I know that when I was in it, I just felt like it was never going to end. I truly couldn't see a way out. I had prayed every prayer. I had asked for help. I had talked to specialists, and I just truly felt so trapped, particularly when it's mental health. You can feel quite trapped within your own mind and body, and you just don't know how to get out of it often. And that's what I felt like for those 6 years. And I think it can be quite lonely sometimes as well, quite isolating, because unless you've been through it, often people don't understand how you're thinking, why you're thinking the way you are. And that's tough. That is so tough. And so, like, if you're going through that right now, I just want you to know, and I guess that's what this scripture is saying, is that there is a hope. There really is a hope. I know right now you can't see the end of it, but I know that once you get through it, that it will totally change your life, because I know it did for me. And I know that in my life, you know, I got breakthrough from that, and we talk about it a bit more in the other podcast, but probably about 5 years ago now, I think I said, my life just changed literally from the moment that anxiety kind of stopped and broke off. I went on a school camp literally the next day.
Amazing.
For 3 weeks.
Wow. To
another state. And then that next year, I went overseas to India and traveled without my family. Like, one of my main anxiety points was being away from my house and being away from my comfort space. And I literally went to another country, and it just completely changed my life. I'm speaking on a podcast. I used to cry when I had to public speak. I literally used to not be able to deal with those situations because the anxiety would be so bad. And now one of my literal jobs is to get to come here and speak and chat and talk about these things. And at the time when I was in it, I think if someone said to me, this would have been your life after that, I probably would have laughed in their face and been like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And look, I'm not saying it was easy. It was a difficult 6 years. It was tough. But I am such a different person now. And the person that I am now is only because of the things that were produced in me when I lent into God during that season. And I think that's really the main thing that I want to, I guess, convey here, is that endurance looks like leaning into God as well. I think it looks like speaking out scriptures and getting things to encourage you, and listening to worship music when you're feeling so broken and sad, and knowing that God doesn't leave us in those seasons. He's walking with us.
It blows my mind how Ash was once so paralyzed by the idea of public speaking, she would cry. But now look at her. She's on a podcast. She's speaking boldly. And I love what she said about the fact that the whole season of anxiety and battling with it ultimately drew her closer to God and created things in her that she relies on and utilizes today. There's nothing like a difficult situation when it comes to growing character. I'm not sure what situation you're facing, whether it's to do with your finances, maybe your career goals, maybe your health, maybe something involving relationships. Maybe for you, it's got something to do with your faith and your spirituality. I'm not sure what problem is staring you in the face right now. But I hope that today you can choose to acknowledge that there is a plan and purpose even in the pain. That it won't be pointless, that one day you will look back on this situation and maybe not want to go through it again, but definitely be grateful for the fruit of it. Don't miss out on all the good God can bring out of a bad situation. Focus on the hope. Focus on the other side. Focus on God. That's how we get through. Romans chapter 5 verses 3-4. We even take pride in our problems because we know that trouble produces endurance. Endurance produces character, and character produces hope. There is hope. Cling to it with all you have today. Well, that wraps up today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. Catch up tomorrow.